Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Pearlman.
Hello. We're going to be talking about animals and what we can learn from them, especially dogs, with my guest, William Bill Miller. He is an Episcopal priest, a writer, storyteller, and animal advocate. He has lived in Texas and Hawaii and now resides in New Orleans with, of course, his 6 dogs. He is founder of the Howlelujah Foundation for Animal Welfare, and that's Howlelujah spelled Howlelujah. He has written 3 books, including The Gospel According to Sam, The Beer Drinker's Guide to God, and his most recent, The Last Hallelujah, Tales from the Trail. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Nancy. It's great to be with you.
I thoroughly enjoyed your book because you have such a sense of humor, including the name. You're talking about one of your dogs, Willie, but that dog has a longer name, which you'll have to explain, and you constantly kind of changed words from hallelujah to howlelujah. Explain that.
Yes, I keep my dictionary handy, and fortunately my editor has been kind enough to let me fuse the canine language with the English language and the synthesis, what we come up with and what ends up on the page. Hopefully humans and dogs will recognize. But Willie, my dog from the beautiful garden island of Kauai, his full name was Willie Nelson. And I grew up in Texas and was a big fan of Willie Nelson, still am. I just think he's such a wonderful human and songwriter and musician. As it turned out, on the island of Kauai, the Willie Harbor is the harbor where all the ships come in. And a favorite watering hole I had there was the Willie Tavern. And they gave me my clergy discount each time I would belly up to the bar. So Willie was a place and a name that I was quite fond of. And when I met this unusual critter at the Kauai Humane Society, I wanted to combine my Texas roots with my new Hawaii home. And so we came up with Willie Nelson.
And your other dogs have some interesting names, too. You seem to rescue animals that some shelters were ready to put to sleep, as we politely say.
Yes. It's been really interesting. All of the dogs that have come into my life have come with a story. It's almost as if there's been some sort of divine matchmaking going on behind the scenes. So my dog with a single name, his name is Sinbad, which I suppose is a good name for a priest dog, Sinbad. He was really quite a miracle story. He was close to death when he was discovered by the side of the road one Palm Sunday in Kauai. He was found by a Jewish friend of mine who's a paddler there on Kauai and had his own sort of new life story after being involved in a paddling accident in Hawaii. But he found Sinbad for me, and Willie and I rescued him. And then we've had just a whole herd of wonderful beasts find us since then. We've had Mahalia Jackson, Queen Liliuokalani, and she is half New Orleanian and half Hawaiian by way of Las Vegas. And then we have a young, beautiful blue pit bull, gray pit bull. His name is Mono, which is the Hawaiian word for shark. Mono Professor Shorthair Miller. Of course, Professor Longhair was a great New Orleans rhythm and blues pianist and musician who was born actually just a few miles from where I live here. And then our most recent addition, who is also from Kauai and who has quite an interesting story. He had spent much of his life chained to a tree, and a friend of mine who's a veterinarian on the island found him and noticed that he looked a lot like Willie Nelson. And so we were able to rescue him and bring him all the way across the Pacific Ocean to Louisiana. And his name is Waylon Wailua Jelly Roll Jennings. So he's got a little Texan in him and a little New Orleanian and a little Hawaiian as well.
You've certainly combined your interest in music and places and historic people and put it all together in a very humorous tale of how you took a 5,000-mile tour with your dog Willie to help raise money for homeless dogs and for animal shelters. You have that love of the dogs because to you they're grounding you and keeping you closer to the earth. And as a man of faith, you also see the connection of how we can learn from dogs about spirituality. Even though the book has that element in it from your own personal experience, one can just enjoy your stories about how the dogs have taught you to love people, care about the earth, care about other creatures. You've really combined a lot of it.
Yes. It was interesting when Willie was diagnosed with terminal cancer back in November of 2016. He was only given a few months to live. We put him on a healthy diet and got him connected with a friend of mine who's a natural vet, and we did some traditional medicine as well. I think that Willie was surrounded by love, and he was a giver of love. By the next summer, which was the summer of 2017, he was going strong. Really, the idea for the tour began because I loved him so. When your best friend is dying of cancer, you want to spend time with them. And what better way to spend time with someone you love than a road trip across the beautiful southwestern United States? And so that was the first motivator. But then we realized that his story was worth sharing, his miracle story, really, and that he was still alive. And some of his canine siblings had very powerful stories in their own right. My first dog, Sam, had quite an interesting story. He had survived a house fire and had become an inspiration to many. In addition to simply being together, we shared a lot of dog stories that I think were inspiring to people. And we also wanted to raise awareness and raise funds for people who were helping our animal friends in all the cities that we visited. And so in most cities, there was a partnership with a local animal welfare organization or shelter. Willie ended up raising thousands of dollars and continues to through his Howlelujah Foundation.
The stories of who you met and how they responded to your dog and how they responded to your message was just delightful reading. Tell people about that one that really was an interesting twist on the term service dog, because obviously when you're traveling, most hotels and motels don't want an animal, except they have to accept a service dog. And you stopped at one, answered the question, is that a service dog? And you said no, but why don't you pick up the story?
Yes, that particular tale happened right at the end of our journey. It was an arduous journey. It was exhausting in a lot of ways. We're driving all day, and Willie was not a whole lot of help, either as navigator or driver. And so while he was napping, I was driving. I was, unloading boxes and getting him situated and preparing to speak and share his story. On our way back from Las Vegas, we slowed the pace down a bit and took our time, and we wanted to be sure and check in with some friends that we had simply waved at on the way through. We were blazing a pretty fast trail. And so we had driven. It was a very long day of driving. I think we were in the car from New Mexico to Dallas, and it was about a 12-hour drive. Since this was not on the original itinerary, I had to book a hotel as we were traveling. And as you know, not every hotel will allow dogs, but there are some who will. And we had become quite familiar with which hotel chains were friendly to beasts. And so I booked this one thinking that it was dog friendly. And we showed up pretty late that evening. I had just enough time to get Willie situated and then meet my friend for dinner after a very, very long day. And that's when the hotel desk clerk looked at Willie and asked me, "Sir, that is a service dog, isn't he?" And, I'm a priest, so I can't tell a lie. So I said, well, no, actually, he's a very interesting dog, and he has done a lot of good in the world. And I told him a little bit about our Howlelujah tour. The man looked at me and he said, well, I'm really sorry, sir, but we don't allow animals in this hotel unless they're service dogs. But based on what you've told me, I think what you're trying to tell me, sir, is that this dog has been of great service to our world and is providing an invaluable service to his fellow canines and to humans alike and bringing them together to do good work. So, sir, let me rephrase that question. Mr. Willie Nelson is a service dog, isn't he? And at that point I said, yes, sir, he is a service dog.
There are so many charming stories that you have in the book. That's why I just had a hard time putting it down. I just kept wanting to read more because those are stories that we can all learn from the animals. In fact, you think that there are 4 spiritual disciplines or spiritual practices of dogs that we can learn from, like work hard, play hard, nap hard, sniff hard.
Yes. What I tell people in some of my sermons is that dogs are the Creator's best work. The Creator did pretty well with humans, but really well with dogs. There's so many spiritual lessons and life lessons that I've learned from my dogs, especially from Willie. One is that they exhibit a sort of spirituality on all fours because they're grounded, they're close to the earth, they're so connected to the earth, they sniff out truth wherever truth might be found, and often it is close to the earth and close to nature and creation where we discern the deepest spiritual truths. And then I have those 4 spiritual disciplines or spiritual practices that I've learned from Willie and from Sam and from all of my dogs. And that is work hard. Dogs are very clear about what's important to them, and they're very clear about what is worth getting worked up over. And of course, for Willie, that was a treat. But he would put all his emphasis on that delicious, tasty morsel of goodness. It helped me think more seriously about, what is it that we humans get worked up over? And are they the things that really matter, that really feed our souls, that really sustain the good earth and make a difference? So what are we working hard for? And then play hard. I like to say that life is too short and life is too important to be taken too seriously. There's just such joy and playfulness exhibited by dogs, and I think that's very much part of the spiritual tradition. And I think that's a great heresy of a lot of things that are written these days in the name of spirituality, that religion is not funny, spirituality is not funny, that God does not have a sense of humor. And I think that serial solemnity and spiritual awareness have nothing in common. So that play hard component of just being playful and joyful and enjoying life. And then, of course, nap hard, I would call that the Sabbath principle. That's really important for all of us to take a good nap every now and then and just forget our troubles and find a cool spot on the couch or on the floor and simply rest and be renewed. And then that last one that I call sniff hard, I noticed that Willie, as we traveled across the Southwest, his nose went into overdrive, and he was so curious. I think that's an important spiritual quality for all humans, to be curious, to be aware, to pay attention, to let creation speak to us through our senses. So those are a few of the things I've learned from Willie and my other dogs, and they continue to reveal deep truths to me every day.
And I'm so pleased that you revealed some of those truths in a most charming way in your book, The Last Howlelujah, Tales from the Trail. And, of course, Tales is Tails, not Tales.
Yes. As we were on the Last Howlelujah tour, when people see a dog and they heard the story of Willie, they just became so much more open and so much more vulnerable, so much more kind and loving. We met so many wonderful people who wanted to open their heart to Willie and to me. They wanted to share their own stories about their best friends and faithful companions. So many photos of dogs shared. It was as if the book wrote itself.
I think it's important for us to remind people that they should not buy dogs, but rescue them from shelters.
Yes, There are so many wonderful dogs looking for a home. Virtually all the dogs that I have had have been rescues from a shelter. I got to tell you, I think there is an attitude of gratitude that resides in those critters from the moment they see you and the moment they meet you and they realize what's happening, that you are opening your heart, you're opening your home to them. They are eternally grateful, and it's just a shame that there's any dog left in a shelter because they make such wonderful companions and family members.
And as a cat lover, you made me love some dogs.
Well, I got to tell you that although cat is not dog spelled backwards, I do think that cats have a very special place in our world and in our hearts. Willie loved every cat that he ever met. I think they're magnificent creatures in their own right.
I am so looking forward to more books of more tales of tales from future docs that you have. I want to thank you so very much for giving some wonderful insights about how we can learn from our companion animals, how we can care about the earth through seeing how the dogs care about humans and other creatures as well. Thank you for being my guest.
Well, thank you, Nancy. We sure enjoyed it.
I have been speaking with William Miller. He is an Episcopal priest, writer, storyteller, and animal advocate, and founder of the Howlelujah Foundation for Animal Welfare. I'm Nancy Pearlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Pearlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.